since we cover quite a few different patterns, can you pick the most expensive one? And so if someone fixed only one this week, which one is the best candidate actually?
Well, you gotta make trust in your assertions, so you need to improve on your assertions because in the end you're testing that product and you need to have full confidence in that product.
Welcome to ArchQA Unscripted. In this podcast, we bring you conversations with the engineers behind real quality engineering. Let's dive into the world of quality engineering.
Last episode, we got the rules out of people's head and integrate them into the repo. Today, we will talk about what happens when you don't do it. Skipping the architecture at the start does not save you actually the work. It only delays it. And yes, it comes back bigger as maintenance. So today, we will talk about the main pain points, what each one costs you, and when the bill arrives. Stefan, what is the common between architecture and confidence?
Well, the difference is pretty simple. People see a green check mark in the pipeline and immediately assume the product works. But the green line doesn't mean the application is functioning. It only means that the specific assertions the engineer happened to write didn't fail. If those assertions are weak, that green check mark is actively lying to you. For example, let's take an API testing. If your test only checks that the status code is 200 or 201, that's fine. But what if the backend returned an empty payload or a silent error inside your body? Your test passes, but we didn't check that we had an issue. Or maybe in the UI, if you just saw that a generic locator is visible, instead of checking the actual data, the test passes, but it doesn't give much of a value there. Without architectural standards that define what a strict comprehensive assertion looks like, a green suit isn't proving the absence of bugs, it's just hiding real breakage.
So the first hidden cost is false confidence, right?
Absolutely. That is the worst thing. Like your test being green and they're just not testing what they should test.
Okay. So there is a very common question, but I want to hear your opinion. What's the number one reason test automation projects died?
Well, it should be the maintenance. The suit becomes a nightmare to change, so people stop trusting it. It gets ignored, and a suit that nobody trusts is a dead weight. That's exactly the trap. You write a script, the browser spins up, you get a green check. Is that the only point? Maybe there are some other points that you need to make sure that it's better. And that's the number one reason is the maintenance of the test automation.
Okay, so with no architecture, you say the first week is fantastic. When actually the build arrives, and what does it look like?
Well, it depends on the volume of the team, but it should land in the first month or not after the month 6. You should definitely catch the build by then. Suddenly, the development team updates a single UI component or an API endpoint, and you find yourself manually updating the exact same locator or payload across different files. And a basic user flow changes, and half your tests turn red, and you can't easily say why. And that is when you start hearing the most dangerous phrase in the software engineering: nobody touched that file. The moment engineers are afraid to modify a piece of code because of the blast radius, that's when you have already lost control of the repository.
Okay, but isn't that just normal tech debt? Because every code base actually has it.
Yeah, there's a massive difference between the tech debt you choose and the tech debt you inherited. Normal tech debt is conscious engineering trade-off. You sit down and say, we're going to take the shortcut today, hit the release, and we will rewrite next sprint. That debt is tracked. But the debt you get from lacking architecture, nobody consciously decided that. It exists because there were never any boundaries or rules to violate in the first place. That kind of debt isn't tracked on a Jira board. It just compounds silently in the background.
Can you give me a few examples of patterns that will bring only headache down the road? And for each one, of course, tell me the maintenance cost you pay later.
Well, first it got to be the duplication. Look at the set of steps, like locating the email field or typing the password, clicking the submit button. The bulk of code is copy pasted in, let's say, 15 different tests, and that maintenance cost there is huge. And when a developer changes the login button, you aren't fixing the locator in one file, you're fixing it in many places, and you're trying to do it with your IDE, globally replace it, but sometimes you forget. And again, we have a red test just because of that. And that will cause your pipeline to be flaky.
Yeah, and just to add, you can use replace all, but there can be possibilities in your script that you actually don't want to replace, and it is very hard to understand what you want to replace and what is not going to be replaced.
Yeah, you should definitely eliminate the risk of having such a issue, and that's how you do it. You just remove the duplication from the very beginning, and it's not going to happen. That's the difference.
Okay, another pattern.
Yeah, let's mention the God-object. For example, let's take a BasePage class that many people still use. I started using it when I started with the automation, but nowadays I'm not using it. It's a long file that handles a lot of locators. For example, the header, the footer, the login, the user profile, etc. And that's not great. And this is how you create the file that everyone is terrified to touch, because changing one thing might accidentally break another thing, and it's not great.
Yeah, absolutely. The person that detests base pages, and I actually never use them.
Yeah, I guess it's better not to have them, because why having them? Why extending every single new page object with a base page, which eventually should have only 3-4 things that are common between pages, and there's no need of that. You can just duplicate. That duplication is fine in the different page objects.
To be honest, you can actually use composition and to create these reusable components, but I believe we will touch this a bit later in our conversation.
Yeah, composition is great, but yeah, let's speak about that later. Let's move with the magic strings. Let's say we have the string like API login, which is your endpoint URL, and the user role, like for example member, hard-coded straight in your spec files. The cost, zero single source of truth. If I make a typo, the TypeScript won't catch it, or the compiler, it won't catch it, because it's just a simple string, and the test will mysteriously fail in the next run.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And the worst thing is when someone change a role from member to user. What is happening there?
Yeah, that's ugly part. That's why you need to have only one single source of truth. Just change one place and you have it green everywhere. And that's the real issue of magic strings. And of course, we gotta say about the weak assertions, like we mentioned them earlier. We have an API test, for example, that has a response status check only and no body check. And that's false confidence, because the body could be empty, or the error message is different, or something else is happening. The test will stay green, but it's hiding a bug, which is not great. And we are engineers, and we need to prevent those issues from happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And since we cover quite a few different patterns, can you pick the most expensive one? And so if someone fixed only one this week, which one is the best candidate actually?
Well, you gotta make trust in your assertions, so you need to improve on your assertions, because in the end you're testing that product and you need to have full confidence in that product. Of course, for me, for example, the worst one is the duplication, because from the very beginning when I started the automation, I was told by my mentor, if something is repeated 3 or more times, it's time to think about removing that duplication. And I'm doing it ever since. I even do it when I see 2 times, not 3 times, and it's really annoying to have that duplication around various different files.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So, since we cover quite a few technical reasons, can you mention a single non-technical issue that probably is equal expensive?
The most expensive tax you pay for bad architecture is the human trust. When a suite is new, that build is treated like a fire alarm. People stop what they're doing and start to investigate. And when they start investigating it, if they see that it's just caused by a flaky locator or a missing await, they lose faith in those tests. And let's be honest, that's not great. We're there to prove that the product is great, and we're giving false positives just because we're not doing the things the proper way. Give it a few months with that, and people start running the test, because sometimes he's going to pass with the missing await, sometimes he's going to not pass, and people start running, and the rerun culture settles in. And instead of checking logs, they're always just rerunning the pipeline until they see a green check mark. That's the fatal consequence. It hides a bug that could be leaked to the production, and you cannot do anything about it because people already lost trust in your automation framework.
So that was the cost. If you skip the architecture at the beginning, you don't actually avoid the work. You just push it into the maintenance that only keeps growing. We named the main pain points: duplication that multiplies every change, the God-object that couples everything, magic strings with no single source of truth, weak assertions that make green tests meaningless, and the flakiness that slowly kills the team's trust into the whole suite. In the next episode, we will fix it. Stefan and I will open the real framework and walk it, decision by decision. No theory, just code. See you there.